Can the season just start already? Because the idea of LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards sharing the same backcourt is absolutely wild. If this deal really plays out the way people expect, Minnesota just became one of the most entertaining teams in basketball overnight. Before we dive into the trade, if you love NBA breakdowns, trade reactions, and basketball stories all season long, make sure to subscribe and join the channel because we've got plenty more coming. The blockbuster centers around LaMelo Ball and Josh Green heading to the Timberwolves, while Charlotte receives Naz Reid along with a massive package of 7 picks and pick swaps. At first glance, it feels like Minnesota landed the superstar, but the more you look at the details, the harder this trade becomes to judge. Both franchises are betting on completely different futures, and that's what makes this so fascinating. From a pure basketball perspective, it's easy to understand why Minnesota made the move. Last season exposed a major weakness. Anthony Edwards was forced to create almost everything himself, especially late in games. Too many possessions turned into, "Ant, go make something happen." That works for stretches, but it isn't the formula for winning championships in a loaded Western Conference. When you're trying to beat teams like Oklahoma City or San Antonio, you need multiple creators who can punish defenses in different ways. That's exactly what LaMelo Ball brings. When healthy, he's one of the league's most gifted playmakers. He pushes the pace, creates easy baskets, stretches defenses with his shooting range, and makes teammates better simply by being on the floor. Pairing that with Edwards' explosive scoring could give Minnesota one of the most dangerous backcourts in the NBA. The combination of passing, shot creation, transition offense, and pure star power should make the Timberwolves must-watch television every single night. But that's only one side of the story. Minnesota didn't just make an exciting move, they made an expensive one. Giving up Naz Reid plus 7 picks or pick swaps is an enormous price, especially for a franchise that already emptied much of its draft capital in the Rudy Gobert trade. This isn't just another aggressive swing, it's a clear statement that the Timberwolves believe LaMelo is the missing piece who can push Anthony Edwards toward championship contention. That's a huge gamble. If Ball stays healthy and the partnership clicks, Minnesota could become one of the biggest threats in the West. If injuries or chemistry issues get in the way, though, the Wolves may have sacrificed nearly every remaining asset for a move that falls short. That's why this trade isn't nearly as one-sided as it looks at first glance. Minnesota reached the point where patience just wasn't enough anymore. Every season, the Western Conference gets tougher, while the Timberwolves kept running into the same offensive issues. They desperately needed another creator alongside Anthony Edwards, and LaMelo Ball checks that box immediately. If this gamble works, nobody is going to complain about the draft picks they gave up. That's how blockbuster trades are remembered. Win big, and the price suddenly looks reasonable. The problem is what happens if it doesn't work. Minnesota has already pushed most of its chips into the middle of the table. First came the Rudy Gobert trade. Now they've doubled down by acquiring LaMelo. Naz Reid is gone, and so is most of the remaining draft capital. Teams only get so many chances to make franchise-changing moves before the cupboard is empty. At some point, one of those swings has to deliver a championship-level result. For the Timberwolves, this really feels like the moment where everything has to come together. The projected lineup is fascinating. A group featuring LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, Ayo Dosunmu, Jaden McDaniels, and Rudy Gobert has plenty to like. LaMelo gives them elite playmaking. Edwards should see cleaner driving lanes and easier scoring chances. Dosunmu keeps the offense moving. McDaniels remains one of the league's better perimeter defenders, and Gobert still anchors the paint defensively. On paper, that's a very balanced group. There is one concern though. Starting 3 guards in the Western Conference could create matchup problems against bigger teams. Naz Reid gave Minnesota valuable frontcourt depth, scoring, and lineup flexibility every time he came off the bench. His ability to stretch the floor and play multiple roles made him one of the most important players on the roster. Losing that versatility is a bigger deal than many people realize. Even Julius Randle, despite an inconsistent postseason, gave the team extra size and physicality at power forward. Without Reid, McDaniels likely shifts into that role full time, and while he's an outstanding defender, asking him to battle bigger forwards every night could become a real challenge. That's why this trade is so complicated. Minnesota solved one major weakness by adding another elite creator, but it may have created a completely different problem in the front court. With so few assets left, fixing that issue won't be easy. As for Charlotte, this isn't the disaster many people think it is. Losing LaMelo Ball hurts, but the return is significant. Naz Reid is an excellent player who immediately fills a major need. He brings size, shooting, rebounding, interior scoring, and versatility, giving the Hornets a dependable valuable frontcourt piece they can build around as they continue reshaping the roster. From Charlotte's perspective, this deal actually makes a lot of basketball sense. The Hornets were one of the hottest offensive teams in the league during the closing stretch of last season, but their defense still had obvious weaknesses. They simply lacked size and physicality in the frontcourt. That's why Naz Reid isn't just another player thrown into the trade package. He directly addresses one of the biggest holes on the roster and immediately gives Charlotte a versatile big who can score, rebound, stretch the floor, and play multiple positions. Before this trade, it felt like the Hornets' offseason plan would revolve around moving Miles Bridges and using draft assets to find a long-term answer at power forward. Instead, they completely changed direction by trading LaMelo Ball. At first, that looked shocking, but when you factor in Naz Reid, the huge collection of draft picks and swaps, and the flexibility they now have moving forward, it's much easier to understand why so many people believe Charlotte came away with a tremendous return. They didn't just add a quality starter, they also positioned themselves for another major move if the right opportunity presents itself. The surprising part is the timing. Charlotte finished last season on an incredible run, going 27-8 after February. During the minutes when LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, and Con Knueppel shared the floor, the Hornets posted an offensive rating above 133 while outscoring opponents by more than 15 points per 100 possessions. Those aren't numbers produced by luck. They suggest the team had started building real chemistry, and LaMelo was at the heart of everything they did offensively. That's why it's still difficult to fully understand why the organization decided this was the moment to move him. Then another move made everything clearer. Just hours after trading Ball, Charlotte signed Coby White to a 3-year, $74 million contract. Suddenly, the front office's plans started coming into focus. They weren't simply replacing LaMelo with draft picks. They were betting that White could become the next starting point guard. It's not hard to see why they believe in him. After arriving from Chicago, White played some of the best basketball of his career. He averaged over 17 points per game while providing efficient scoring, steady playmaking, and a huge boost off the bench. Charlotte clearly believes he can handle an even bigger role, and considering the contract they gave him, it's a reasonable gamble. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, the Hornets now have Coby White, Brandon Miller, Con Knueppel, Naz Reid, additional draft capital, and greater financial flexibility. They also have enough assets to stay aggressive if another star becomes available. That's why this trade may end up looking much better for Charlotte than many people expected. Charlotte is actually in a really good position, even if trading LaMelo Ball feels almost impossible to accept emotionally. The franchise has clearly picked its direction, and everything now revolves around Brandon Miller and Con Knueppel. That's the foundation they're building around, and it's easy to understand why. Knueppel was phenomenal as a rookie. His shooting was on another level, setting a rookie three-point shooting record while consistently stretching defenses every single night. He looked comfortable from the opening weeks of the season and quickly became one of the league's most dangerous young shooters. Then there's Brandon Miller, who still looks like he has genuine star potential. His ability to score at all three levels while contributing defensively makes him exactly the kind of wing every team wants to build around. Charlotte's front office has essentially made its decision. Miller and Knueppel are the future. Coby White becomes the steady lead guard. Naz Reid adds much needed size and versatility in the front court, and the extra draft picks provide flexibility for whatever comes next. Whether that's another trade or simply building through the draft, the Hornets suddenly have options. That doesn't mean this plan is guaranteed to work. There's a huge difference between Coby White thriving as a sixth man and becoming the full-time starting point guard for a team trying to climb the Eastern Conference standings. He doesn't need to replace everything LaMelo brought to the offense because very few guards can. What Charlotte needs is consistency. White has to organize the offense, make smart decisions, and relieve pressure from Miller and Knueppel, whose responsibilities are about to grow significantly. Meanwhile, LaMelo Ball is stepping into a completely different situation. Minnesota isn't asking him to carry a rebuilding franchise or put on a nightly highlight show. His job is simple: help Anthony Edwards win championships. That's a completely different level of expectation, and it's one that could bring out the best version of his game. Some people will still point to the questionable shot selection, the deep pull-up threes, and the occasional risky decision-making. Those concerns are fair, but last season also showed a more focused LaMelo. When healthy, he played with better control, led Charlotte's offense efficiently, and impacted winning far more than his raw statistics suggested. Now, he'll share those responsibilities with Edwards. That partnership could be one of the league's most explosive backcourts, but excitement alone won't determine whether this trade succeeds. Minnesota still has important questions to answer. Can they defend well enough after losing size? Can they survive smaller lineups against the best teams in the West? And above all, can LaMelo Ball finally stay healthy for an entire season? Because more than anything else, that's the question that will ultimately decide whether this blockbuster trade becomes a championship move or a missed opportunity. At the end of the day, this trade comes down to one thing above everything else: health. LaMelo Ball's talent has never been the question. His passing, creativity, and ability to transform an offense are already proven. The concern has always been whether he can stay on the court. Ankle injuries have interrupted season after season, and until he proves otherwise, every team that builds around him has to accept that risk. If Minnesota only gets another 30 or 40 games from LaMelo, this trade could unravel in a hurry. The Timberwolves simply don't have many contingency plans left after giving up so much to make this deal happen. So who actually won the trade? Right now, I give the edge to Charlotte. It sounds strange because Minnesota landed the biggest star in the deal, and the basketball fit alongside Anthony Edwards is genuinely exciting. But team building isn't just about talent, it's about balancing talent with risk, and Charlotte may have sold at exactly the right time. I'd give the Hornets a B+ today, with room for that grade to climb even higher. They added Naz Reid, collected a huge package of draft assets, gained financial flexibility, and still have enough resources to make another significant move if the opportunity presents itself. More importantly, they know LaMelo's medical history better than anyone. They watched him return to form, saw his value rise again, and decided this was the right moment to cash in. If injuries become an issue again, they'll look incredibly smart for making the move when they did. Minnesota, meanwhile, earns about a B- from me. That's not because I dislike the trade, quite the opposite. If LaMelo stays healthy, this partnership with Anthony Edwards could become one of the most dangerous duos in basketball. The offensive ceiling is incredibly high, and the Timberwolves could absolutely emerge as legitimate contenders in the Western Conference. The problem is that this move leaves almost no margin for error. They've already invested heavily in Rudy Gobert. Now they've pushed even more assets into acquiring LaMelo. If injuries strike again, they'll have fewer draft picks, less depth, and very limited flexibility to make another major move. That's the danger of going all in. Before you go, if you're enjoying these NBA trade breakdowns and off-season discussions, make sure to subscribe because there are plenty more videos on the way as every blockbuster move reshapes the league. For now, I think Charlotte walks away as the early winner. They gained flexibility, strengthened the roster, and positioned themselves well for the future. Minnesota made the bigger gamble, and if it pays off, nobody will question it. But until LaMelo proves he can stay healthy over a full season, that gamble will continue to define this entire trade.